Welcome to the Backyard Freemason. I'm coming up into my beautiful backyard to talk more about Freemasonry and Mormonism. When I get to my destination, I will get out of my truck and I'll share with you more ideas from some misunderstandings I think Matt Brown and some LDS scholars are having concerning the relationship of Freemasonry and Mormonism. It's a terrific subject. It's a fascinating idea. I've discovered some new resources and new themes and new ways to present this information that I hope will be helpful and meaningful to us all. Is that a great sign to stand in front of and give a lecture on Mormonism and Freemasonry, or what? No trespassing. I'm not going to trespass. I stopped right here, right at the fence. As a Mason, I'm a law-abiding citizen, so what the heck? Yeah. Hey, I'm going to make a proposition tonight that is probably going to shock a lot of LDS. And it's probably going to shock a few Masons too. I don't know if it'll shock them, but I'm well aware that this is going to be controversial in some respects. And rightfully so. But I have a proposition that I have never heard anyone say before, and I'm actually sincerely serious about this. Based on my research into Freemasonry, and I am delving into this thing just as hard and heavy as I can, and I'm finding an enormous amount of fascinating literature and information. And I'll do some articles on this too, but in Matt Brown's book, Exploring the Connection Between Mormons and Masons, in his appendix, he says there are 7 statements that he says on page 179 and 180 that he discusses on the various statements of the LDS folks concerning Masonry. And I think this is interesting. Let me read you a few of these. Willard Richards, 16th of March, 1842. Masonry had its origin in the priesthood. A hint to the wise is sufficient. Heber C. Kimball, 17th of June, 1842. There is a similarity of priesthood in Masonry. Brother Joseph Smith says Masonry was taken from priesthood. Now, and from priesthood, of course, the Mormon understanding of this is the Melchizedek priesthood and the Aaronic priesthoods in the Old Testament. It is the religion of the Old Testament. Benjamin F. Johnson of 1843 says, Joseph Smith told me Masonry, as at present was the apostate endowments, as sectarian religion was the apostate religion. And then Joseph Fielding in December of 1843 says, the LDS temple ordinances are the true origin of Masonry. And the saints in Salt Lake City between 1849 and 1850 say Masonry was originally of the church and one of its favorite institutions. To advance the members in their spiritual functions, it had become perverted from its designs. And then Heber C. Kimball on the 9th of November 1858, this was when he was in Salt Lake at this time, the Masonry of today is received from the apostasy. They have now and then a thing that is correct, but we have the real thing. And then the church authorities from 1843 to 1847. The Mormon leaders have always asserted that Freemasonry was a degenerate representation of the order of the true priesthood. And this is a very interesting appendix because I'm going to propose something quite out of the ordinary that I've never heard anyone propose before. In my studying of Freemasonry, now, and understand, I'm not a spokesman for the LDS Church, any more than I am a spokesman for Freemasonry. This is my understanding. That's just how it is. There is no official spokesman for Freemasonry. We all interpret the symbols, the meanings of the rituals, etc., for our own benefit and use. Just like Nephi took Isaiah for his own understanding and enjoyed it and shared his interpretation of Isaiah with his people. Well, that's what we Freemasons do. I propose that the Prophet Joseph Smith misunderstood the nature of Freemasonry. I think he assumed it was a religion. And based on the idea, well, and Brigham Young, he didn't use any of Brigham Young in here. Matt Brown didn't in that appendix, which is too bad. Because Brigham Young has some fabulous statements on this about how Freemasonry went back to the original Solomon's Temple and the original temple endowment, which Solomon's Temple had, and it was used for the same purposes as our endowment today. Unfortunately, Freemasonry is a degenerated endowment, so on and so forth. And that's why in the first of Brown's book, he is comparing and contrasting Mormonism with Freemasonry. And to a Freemason, it's so obvious that his fear, his bias, Brown's bias and fear, is in comparing Mormonism and Freemasonry. You have to absolutely maximize the religion of Mormonism and minimize the significance, the implications, the meaning, the history, the philosophy of the religion of Freemasonry. Therefore, Mormonism is superior and Freemasonry is inferior. And the whole problem with all of this, including from the Prophet Joseph Smith's view, is that Freemasonry is a religion. It is not. And I believe, and you have to say, well, now wait a minute. Brown does pretty good, and believe me, Brown's not the only one. There's several other people who have demonstrated easily, the historical record shows this. Well, Heber C. Kimball became a Mason in the 1820s. So Hiram Smith became a Mason in 1817. Or 1821, I'm not quite sure of the date. I don't have the exact quote with me right now. But several of the early Mormon brethren were Freemasons before Joseph Smith ever had revelations on the endowment. And I know Brown would disagree with me, but I'll do some other videos on that, where I think not only is Brown's interpretation of Freemasonry skewed, his interpretation of Mormon history is skewed on the endowment. And I'll show that in some other videos. Freemasonry is not a religion, and I have some very interesting ideas on that. These guys assumed it was a religion originally, and it apostatized, and that they had the truth originally, and then they lost it, and so on and so forth. That's the legend of Freemasonry. No really good Freemason historian or philosopher at this point in time says Freemasonry originated in Solomon's Temple. Now that might have been the belief of Freemasons in the legends in Joseph Smith's day. I mean, Anderson's Constitution, 1717 and the 1728, they had been around for a while, but those are the legends, the authentic school of Masonic history, basically getting its start with Robert F. Gould's fantastic 4-volume history of Freemasonry, and I'm looking into that also. Haven't read them all yet, but I'm working on it. You just got to be patient with me. It's a great way to study the history of Freemasonry. There's not a lot that goes back. I mean, even the Regius manuscript in the 1360, I believe that was a Masonic document, but the legends are not the history. And as far as tracing the historic aspects of Freemasonry, you can't get it back to the Temple of Solomon, any more than you can get Mormonism back to the Temple of Solomon historically. And that's an interesting point. If you're going to talk history, there's a lot you can't find out yet. But that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't have faith and have a belief in the ideology, the legends